love, dignity, and the deeply forgetful. This is the phrase that Steve, our colleague who had to leave, who really gave us the inspiration to have this conversation, how he titled his talk earlier this morning. And now we are going to pick up on that theme. And we have our group here. We have Lyndon, Maria, Hannah, and I'm David. And I have to say that our conversation was just a wonderful example of relational conversation, a shared dialogue, talking about people who are deeply forgetful. And as Steve said, that's his phrase for referring to folks who have Alzheimer's or might be referred to as having dementia. We're going to start out by offering a quote from the Dalai Lama. And this might be somewhat paraphrased, but there is no reason to more highly value the consciousness of someone who is cognitively intact than someone who is deeply forgetful. And the essence of that phrase captures what really frames so much of our conversation, because we were talking about really stories, I think, that we've all had in having people who are very important to us in our lives or whom we've worked with at different stages in our lives who might have been diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's and might be classified as deeply forgetful. And it was just a wonderful example of shared storytelling, informing our wisdom, informing our heart quality, and I think we bring in that word love as well when we talk about this topic. We talked about vibe, presence, what's underneath, and recognizing that people who are dealing with this condition oftentimes show remarkable qualities of memory when we can reach them. And we talked about people in our lives where we meet them where they are. And we talked about different ways in which we can approach those who might be dealing with deep forgetfulness. The power of ritual, the power of their own stories, the power of the senses, communication. We talked a lot about music as a memory connection. That came out of Steve's talk earlier this morning, and many of us had anecdotes of our own in really using music to reach those who have these deep memory banks, and then you start to see the smiles, the recognition, the connection, the stories of their own, because somehow that music connected deeply with a memory line that they've had, despite maybe what their outward appearance might seem to be. An important thing for all of us to remember, perhaps that's an ironic term in view of our topic, but to remember is that we learn as much or more from helping, from loving, from engaging those who might be deeply forgetful than they might get from us. That it is a very powerful experience, a very maturing experience, a very humane experience to be working with and engaging with and to have as friends and family those who might be dealing with these conditions. We talked about the role of spirituality and faith and the gift of presence. And one of the sort of sidebars that we all deal with in our lives, and at least I have to plead guilty, is we have our phones and our iPads and our laptops and whatnot. And then we forget that one of the biggest gifts that we can give anyone, not just someone who might be experiencing Alzheimer's, but is the gift of our presence, the gift of our intention, and the irony of the fact that perhaps that condition reminds us of, to borrow from the book title, right, the power of now, right, that those who might be experiencing that kind of forgetfulness nevertheless can experience in the moment things that we forget how powerful those events can be, and hence the gift and the reminder to us. We also acknowledge fear. Fear of what our own future might be, and the fact that these illnesses are not something that we can, at this point in our technology, in our medicine, and our health, can cure yet. And so that's sort of looming out there, and I think it's something we all have to acknowledge. But also the fear of communicating with someone who might have a condition that affects their memory. And the awkwardness of approaching someone and wondering what the reaction might be, but then sort of just diving in and realizing that if we're just ourselves and we bring sincerity and we bring intention and we bring care, that so oftentimes those fears start to dissolve, and what comes in its place is a comfort zone, is a feeling of connection, is a feeling of having engaged in a very special communication. So that's really the heart of what we had to share. I might have overlooked some things. I don't know if any of my friends here would like to add to that. Well, thank you. Well, thank you very much. So we had a wonderful conversation, and again, we have to credit Steve for his talk this morning in helping us to frame, what led to our discussion, and we just had a delightful time looking at some very difficult and challenging topics, but one that really connect to our humanity. So it was a pleasure to have this wonderful group of people and this engagement. Thank you.